I feel like there's no need for an introduction with your career, but Ethan Hawke, good morning. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Well, I'm really good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. So I did just watch the movie last night that you produced, you co-wrote, you directed, Blaze, and it's about Blaze Foley that I feel like not a lot of people know about who he is.
Yeah, I call him the snuffleupagus of the outlaw country western music scene. You know, everybody knows Willie and everybody knows Merle, and then, you can get a little further down, you get to the great Townes Van Zandt.
Yeah.
But Blaze Foley is a lesser-known voice in that scene and a great singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
He never made his impact felt on the music business, but he made his impact felt on a lot of people that cared about songwriting.
Yeah.
And so I have this, as an actor, my whole life I watch biopics,
Right.
Whether it's Johnny Cash or Coal Miner's Daughter or whatever it is. They're always about a famous musician. And most of the musicians that I've ever met have been greeted with absolute indifference their whole career,
Well, yeah.
That's really where most people are just throwing it, against the wall.
Yeah, people think it's all glory and it's all this
It is for
great
a handful
stuff.
of people.
Right.
And so I got really interested. Wouldn't it be interesting if you made a biopic, a music biopic about a great poet, a serious person and everything, but where it didn't happen?
Yeah.
And I came across this story of Blaze, his one of the loves of his life. She and he had lived in a treehouse.
Yeah, Sybil.
Yeah, Sybil Rose, and she wrote this book about him called Living in the Woods in a Tree. And it's kind of about this magic period they had falling in love over a couple of years, and where a lot of his music was created and given birth to. And then they moved to Austin for him to try to make it. And then, of course, the story gets a little sadder.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful love story, and that's what I wanted to make a movie about.
Yeah, and I love it too because I think you really highlighted her story as well about how being the spouse of somebody that's following somebody else who's following their dream, because that's not easy either. And it really kind of shows what she went through while he's out on the road.
It's a difficult relationship to dramatize because, of course, anybody who's talented and wants to communicate with others needs a support system around them to help facilitate that. And her love, I think, was one of the best aspects of him.
Yeah.
And she brought that out of him, and without her, he was something else.
Yeah.
A different energy, different forces take over.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, Alia Shawkat plays Sybil, and I always thought to make this movie good, it really needed to be about her.
Yeah. Do you feel like she co-wrote this with you, right? Did you feel any kind of pressure to really get the story right when you were directing this or doing the movie, or was she there with you the whole step of the way?
She was there every step of the way with me. We made the movie so low to the ground that I actually decided to save money and hire her as my script supervisor.
Yeah.
She's my co-writer and script supervisor.
That's
So she
cool.
was right to my left. The whole, she had the script in her hand and was taking notes about, matching and all that other stuff. We had so much fun. And she kind of, see, the trouble with making a movie is if you just try to dramatize the facts, then you make this boring Wikipedia page.
Right.
My job is not to tell the literal truth. My job is to take the truth and tell you a story that has some spiritual meaning, for lack of a better word, like to make sense out of it. The Wikipedia is always there. The true story is always there. I'm trying to say, why is this life of this man, Mike Fuller, who named himself Blaze Foley, and his love affair with Sybil, why might that be of value to you?
Yeah.
And that means you got to make art out of it, a little bit the way that they would make a country song out of it. The song is not literally true, but it has a higher truth. You know?
God, and that movie is kind of like a country song. There's parts of it that I'm like, oh, this is such a tragedy. But
it is. I call it a country western opera because I try to use Blaze's music, his own words, to tell his story as much as possible. He had this amazing thing where shortly before he died, he played a live concert that he recorded. He pretty much took the last of his money that he'd made. If I Could Only Fly had been recorded by Willie, and he had some residual money from that. And Willie and Merle covered it. And so he took that money and tried to record all his songs because otherwise they didn't exist anywhere.
Right.
So he recorded this live concert at the Outhouse. It's kind of aptly named. And shortly after that, he was shot and killed.
Yeah.
And I had this idea of dramatizing that last concert and using it almost like a musical, would do,
Well,
of
yeah.
he's telling you his life story through his songs.
Yeah. What did Sybil say about the movie after she watched the thing and after all the work was done and she saw the final product?
Well, I was sitting next to her. It's a pretty heavy thing for a person to watch aspects of their lives dramatized.
And the
things
love of
that,
her life.
Yeah, and things that were said, reenacted, and anybody that, all right, this is going to sound a little weird, but you're bringing it up, and so I'll tell you how she feels about it. That in a lot of, do you ever read Harry Potter?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, but okay,
yeah,
you see the movies or something?
Yeah, I've seen the
Anyway,
movies.
you could put your spell into like a rattlesnake, or you put your spell into a rock, the stone of such and such, the sorcerer's stone, right? You put a little piece of your spirit magically into this other thing, and then you can live on. Even if you die, you live on through this Horcrux. Right? Well, in a lot of ways, go with me here. A lot of ways, I feel like Blaze put a lot of himself into this music.
Yeah.
Almost like a Horcrux, and he lives on in this music. And if you get really intimate with the music, you start to see him and feel his presence.
Yeah.
And so she kind of feels his presence in this movie. And so it's kind of a mystical experience for her. Mm-hmm. And the fact that his life ended so short that he didn't get to finish his life, that you feel that it's finishing out as people get to, when the internet happened, then this music was available that was never available, and we're starting to find these songs again. And it's a little bit how each generation, whether you talk about Hank Williams or Woody Guthrie, music has a great tradition of being passed on from one generation to the next, and you got to keep that candle lit, keep
it's
it.
It's a little bit like passing on history.
Yeah, exactly. And more important than the movie is the music to me.
Well, I just got goosebumps when you were explaining the magic of the movie too, because there's a line in the movie where he says he doesn't want to be a star, he wants to be a legend. Mm-hmm. And I almost feel like in the movie that you created, you kind of help that happen for him, and you show his story and share it.
And imagine if you were the person he said that to, and then you're watching it happen. So that's what Sybil's, she had this, there's a scene in the movie that actually takes place in Chicago, because they were trying to make it in Austin. Mm-hmm. And then Blaze was a big John Prine fan.
Right.
And John Prine, made it out of here. So he decided maybe we need to move to Chicago and try to make it. And she was an actress, and so she was acting here in small theaters. And he went traveling on the road a little bit, and he came back and wrote this song, If I Could Only Fly. Yeah. And he played it for her, and as she tells a story in her memoir, it's really beautiful that she knew in that instant that he was a fully mature artist, and that this thing he'd been dreaming about his whole life had happened, and that she also knew they were breaking up.
Yeah.
And then as they broke up, later in his life, you hear him on the Outhouse tape saying he wished he'd called it If We Could Only Fly.
Yes.
And if they had to, maybe they would have stayed together if he'd been smart enough, wise enough to see that they were actually together and that it wasn't a solo ride.
It wasn't about him.
Yeah, and it's a very beautiful journey so she's living out it's a strange, there's that Faulkner line about the past doesn't go anywhere, it's not even the past.
Right.
Well, that's when she watched the movie, that's what she felt like. Wow, the past is changing right now.
God, that's powerful stuff.
Well, that's what it was like making the movie.
Yeah, and there's somebody really important in the movie too for Blaze.
Well, I know what you're saying, which is that I had a strange job to do, which is to cast Blaze Foley's father.
Yeah.
And I thought, when you make a movie, things operate a little bit in metaphor too. Like, so if Blaze Foley is representing outlaw country, who is outlaw country's father right now? Who could I cast? Mm-hmm. If it was crazy, cantankerous old man. And I thought of Chris Christopherson.
Who did great,
he's
too.
He's always been an amazing actor.
Yeah.
But I remember, when you actually have the guy who wrote Freedom's Just Another Word for Nothing Left to Lose on set, talking about music and I remember Marcia, who's Blaze's sister, she was on set that day because she wanted to meet Chris, and she brought Blaze's guitar. So we had this amazing magical moment where Ben, who's playing Blaze, opens up Blaze's guitar, which hasn't been opened in,
oh my gosh.
And he just hit it, and it was in perfect tune. And Ben got to take the guitar to Chris and asked Chris to sign it. And Chris, took out and he carved his name into the side. And it's so beautiful to see, because Blaze is pretty much overlooked his whole life, and to see his music being listened to by the people he admired to most, and have his
honored.
guitar, blessed with Chris's signature.
Well, yeah.
It was a great moment for all of us on set. Everybody who, because of course all of us making the movie, we're geeks for music, right? And we love it, and this is our life's blood. And so to have a hero like Christopherson, one of the original Highwaymen there.
Be there. And it was so great, too, because I didn't even realize in the movie it talks about how the family were musicians, Blaze's family, too.
Yeah. Well, that's how a lot of guys like Blaze came to music, is singing in church. That's what they were extremely poor in Arkansas, and so the brother and sister and mom would sing hymns and go around and sing in different places for money, and then the father would basically spend it all on cheap hooch.
Well, yeah.
It's not the first family it's happened to.
Oh, of course. Well, I'm excited. September is when it's coming out, too, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Man, well, I'm glad that you made it. And do you think, making this movie, do you have a different appreciation for maybe outlaw country music, or do you listen to it a little bit differently?
The answer is yes, but you have to understand, my first concert was 1976, Willie Nelson's 4th of July
That's
picnic.
awesome.
So my admiration for outlaw country is already sky high.
Yeah.
But one of the ancillary characters in this movie is Townes Van Zandt, who, for people who really love country music, I always think that Townes is one of America's great poets. I mean, really, if I had to pick one of the greatest poets of the last 50 years, it would be Townes Van Zandt. Pancho and Lefty is his most famous song, and I feel like if I had to put a song as a time capsule representing, a certain period of America, that song is one of the most beautiful songs ever written. It's so mysterious and evocative and strange, and so we have him as this kind of mystical force. And I had Charlie Sexton playing him. And Charlie is Bob Dylan's guitarist for the last 20 years.
Oh,
and a
wow.
great blues guitarist himself.
Yeah.
He's from Austin. He even knew Townes as a little boy.
Wow.
And
I didn't know that.
And so, it's really, I didn't know it when I cast him. I called him up. I'd met Charlie Sexton doing Boyhood.
Yeah.
And I knew he played guitar for Bob Dylan. I knew he played guitar for Bowie. And I knew we're kind of the same age. And so everybody, when he was young, he was really, really beautiful. And all anybody wanted him to be was a pop star. But he wanted to be this blues guitarist, or a great guitarist. I don't think he cared what kind. And so I approached him and said, hey, and I knew what his feelings about acting were, and how seriously he took it. And I said, hey, would you want to play Townes? And he said, well, I knew him. I was like, no, I did not know that.
Yeah.
And then the stories get even deeper, but I'll let him tell those stories. But I realized that he was real. It's very difficult to try to portray genius on film because by definition, we don't understand it.
Yeah.
It's
like just something that's there.
Yeah, it's an overused word, but when I was a kid, I did Dead Poets Society with Robin Williams.
Yeah.
And that is a comic genius. His brain doesn't work like other people's. There aren't two of him. Do you know? You might know somebody kind of might remind you for 5 minutes, but I mean, he was.
It's like that X factor.
And Townes, when you listen to his music, he's not imitating anybody else. He's got this authentic voice that it's why his writing will sustain.
Are you ever, when you work with people like that, just amazed that, oh my God, I can't believe this is my life and I'm working with these people and this gets to be a part of my day every day?
I'm pretty astounded by that.
That's cool.
I mean, being here in Chicago, I remember when I was about 24, it was the first time I came here to do a play at Steppenwolf, because Steppenwolf was kind of the only theater company I cared about.
Yeah.
They did a production of True West, Sam Shepard's True West, with Malkovich and Sinise and Laurie Metcalf, and that was when I decided I didn't know if I wanted to be an actor or a writer or whatever, but watching them do theater, it was like rock and roll. It wasn't some pretentious, airy, weird thing. It was important and relevant, and it affected me. And so they asked me to do the 20th anniversary of Steppenwolf, and I came here. And I remember, I don't know if, I remember I called my friend Richard Linkletter, who I've made a bunch of movies with now, but we were young then, and I said, man, I'm doing this play with Gary Sinise and Sam Shepard. And I remember he said to me, you're pissing in the tall grass with the big dogs. And I remember feeling so grateful. And I've been riding that feeling for about 20 years now.
That's awesome.
And It does feel really good.
Well, it's great. And man, it really shows. It shows in Blaze. I love it. I'm so glad that you made the movie. It's awesome. And I can't wait to see it. So, Ethan Hawke, thank you for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.